Hello and welcome back to the shop. Today I'm going to show you how to make a zippered pillowcase using an old shirt. Okay, so we have our standard pillowcase here, which I have measured, and it is 29 inches by 20 inches. So that's the size that we will want to make our new pillowcase. So when I lay it out over this shirt that they want the pillowcase made from, you can see it's a little bit short. So I wanted it to go side to side so that you could have the button band going up and down on the pillowcase and have the pocket the right way, up and down. So I didn't want to turn the pillowcase sideways, but I did consider that, and you could do that if you wanted to. So, but what I'm going to do is, since I want everything to go this way, I'm going to piece it. So my pillowcase is 3 inches longer than the amount of fabric I have here. So we have 3 inches by 20 inches twice because it's a double layer. So what I'm going to do is take it from the sleeve over here. And we have the exact right amount of fabric. If I line up the edge of the sleeve here at the 0 on my mat and go all the way over, it's just about exactly 20 inches. So I think we can make this work, and I think it'll be kind of fun to have the cuff detail on the cuff of the pillowcase. So I'm going to cut off the sleeve, and I'm going to cut 2 pieces that are 3 inches by 20 inches. If there's enough there for a little extra for seam allowance, I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out my main piece as well, and then we'll piece them together. Okay, so I have my pillowcase lined up with the side seam here. And I am just going to use this pillowcase to use as a template to cut the purple shirt out with. And I have it lined up all the way at the top here. You kind of want to make sure that where you're sewing isn't going to run over a button if you can, so it won't. I'll be sewing right about here, and the next button's a bit of a ways down. And you don't have to be too exact with the adding of the seam allowance and making it exactly 29 by 20 because pillowcases come in different sizes and they still work. So I'm just going to go ahead and start cutting. So I have the shirt just like normal, so we're going to be cutting through both layers. Just want to make sure there's no wrinkles underneath so we know we're getting a nice straight cut. Okay. And so I think I will go ahead and just kind of eyeball a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you wanted to, you could trace this first with the erasable fabric marker, or you could also go out 1/2 inch and draw a line if you wanted to be more exact. I'm just going to go for it. And I do have all of the buttons buttoned for this step to make sure the piece is going to be as it is when it's done. For the side seam, I think I'll just put the scissors in like that and cut up the side. Okay. And then up here you want to make sure you're not getting any crinkles. It can be kind of challenging. So I'm going to slide this over just a little bit like that so that I can cut this again and get rid of the seam. Still leaving about 1/2 inch extra sticking out from the pillowcase. Okay, so we can only go as far as this side seam allows, so I don't need to continue cutting that way. I'll just take this and cut the sleeve off even with the side seam. And then we'll cut the side seam open. Actually, I'll just cut it off to get rid of that seam. So let's see what we got. Okay, not bad. So what I will do next is I will give it a good press to try to flatten this out as much as I can. Although this was a three-dimensional item because that was the sleeve. And then down here, I'll take my rotary cutter and clean up that bottom edge. And if I lose a little bit, I'm not going to worry about it because pillows can be different sizes. So we'll clean up this cut, we'll press this, but first, let's look at the back. That looks good. And we'll kind of trim both of these to be closer to the same size if they're not already. Yeah, we'll clean that up. Okay, so now let's get our other pieces ready that we're cutting out of the sleeve. So that sleeve on this side we cut into, but let's see what we got here. We just need two pieces that are about 3 by 20 with some extra if we have it. Okay, so we're gonna look at where the deepest cut is on this length. So that's right here. So I'm gonna line that up with my bold line here on my mat, right up there. So that's the 25 on my mat. So let's see how far over this goes. It goes to the 45. So we have exactly 20 inches. So that's what we need. And it's at least 3 inches here. So we can get both of our pieces from that. So I think I'll open this button. And I think I'll cut right along this seam. Cut that extra off. I think I'll go ahead and cut right through that cuff, and then I'll actually probably use this buttoned just so we have that little detail on the finished pillow. So I'm just gonna visualize that line and continue to cut straight through. Okay. So now we have this. I like to utilize as many of the shirt's original details as possible because that's what people like about these kind of projects. Okay, so we just need two pieces that are about 3 by 20. I'm going to do 4 by 20 if I can to allow for some seam allowance, some extra that will get trimmed off probably, but just because we can always add, but we can't take away. So for this part I'll use the rotary cutter. So I have the edge of the sleeve, which I know is straight, lined up with one of the lines on my mat, and then the bottom is lined up here too. So I'm going to go from right here and continue this cut. So I'm going to line up my ruler with that and verify that's still straight, that's still straight. And get my rotary cutter. Okay, so now we have a straighter piece to work with here. Okay, so let's see how big this is exactly. It's 10 inches, so we have no problem getting to 4-inch pieces. So, and I could even, to get rid of that little thing, I could bring this over and sew it down, or I could leave it, it's kind of cool. Well, it'll get included in a seam allowance anyway. So I think I'll bring it over and kind of let it get in, well, I don't want to cover that. So that might get, I don't know. We'll see what happens. We could put a little piece behind it if we didn't want that hole to be there. Okay, so, and then I was just thinking to go 4 inches down from this would be right here. And then once we sew a seam allowance, it would be kind of close to that button. I think it'll be okay though. So let's just go with that. And then these little creases, I'm going to try to just kind of leave them intact like this for the most part. Okay, so now I'm gonna start at the bottom here and cut my 4-inch strip from the bottom. So we got a 1-inch mat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Line up our roller over here. Make sure it's lined up at the same marking on the other side, and then make sure nothing has shifted away, which it did. Okay. And my roller is exactly 4 inches, so I'm just going to line it up with the edge down here and go for it. Okay, so here's one 4-inch strip by about 20. Or not, well, yeah, we might as well cut that off to be a straight edge at the end here. so there's one. So now this one we'll take from here, and that'll get rid of this pleat, which I'm actually happy about because I don't want it to look messy. So I'm going to flip this around and cut from the bottom first to square up this, just like we did on the other side. Make sure this is all straight here on a line. Bring that down to a line and we'll cut on that one. Okay, and cut. So now we have a straight edge here and a straight edge at the cuff. Okay, so now we just need to go 4 inches up from this edge and cut again. Perfect. And we'll just square off this edge here. So this one gave us a little more than 20 inches. I'm just going to cut it straight at whatever it is, just so in case we need that, in case we need extra for whatever reason, we can always cut it later. Okay, we have all of our pieces. Now I'm just going to go over to the ironing board and press our main pieces, and I'm going to square them up, and then I will meet you back here. So when I ironed this, I realized that this 3-dimensional shape here was not going to go away and that it needed to be creased in some way. So what I'm going to do is take this excess fabric here and let it fall down kind of like a dart, and I'm going to let it lay so that the crease lays right with that other seam, and I'm just going to stitch it down with the matching fabric. I went ahead and stitched that down. So now I can treat this as a flat piece, and here's both of my pieces. I pressed them and I trimmed them on the cutting mat to be the same size. So now we're ready to add our little extenders that we made from the sleeves. So I'm going to take these and put them right sides together with the pillow pieces, and I'm going to sew along here, and then so I pinned that, and I'm going to sew there, and then I'm about to pin this one on, and I decided that since I cut this one a little bigger, I would allow this little thing to hang off the edge and not be included in that seam, so it wouldn't be messed up. So I'm just gonna have this seam not include that. It'll start in there, and I make sure that my seam wouldn't be going over those buttons. So I'll have a little bit to trim off on either end. So now I'm going to go sew these. So I pinned across the top here for my extender, and then this one I'm going to do the same thing, and then we'll sew these on. But I decided to just let this not be included in the seam, so that'll be a little bit that I trim off, and then I was also careful to make sure where I sew isn't going to run over those buttons, and then we'll have a little bit to trim off on this side too. Okay, so I stitched it on. I finished it with an overlock stitch, and I trimmed off all the excess, so we now have our actual 2 flat pieces ready to go to make our pillowcase. So, okay, so we're gonna make ours with a zipper. So if you want to add a zipper as well, you're gonna have one of your pieces right side up, and then you're gonna put your zipper right side down, like teeth down, onto this piece, and you're going to align it perfectly at the edge over here. Stick some pins if you want to, use a zipper foot if you want to, but you're just going to stitch this down. After you've stitched it down like that, you're going to open it up like this, come to the ironing board, and just press that fabric away from the zipper teeth. Now we're coming back over to the machine and we're going to stitch close to the edge here so that the seam allowance is folded that way as well, and we're stitching through all layers. This is going to keep the fabric from getting into the zipper when you're trying to zip it and unzip it. This just keeps it away, keeps it where it needs to be. And you'll notice I'm using a zipper that's longer than my project. I like to do this if it happens to be longer. So you just let it hang off the edges and we'll cut it off later. So that side's done. Now we're going to take the other side and put it right side down on top of the zipper tape. Let's see, do I want my cuff extender on the same side? I think so. Okay, so we're going to put this over top of the zipper like this, and we're going to make sure it lines up down here and up there with the other fabric. And that it lines up with the edge of the zipper over here. And same thing, we're going to go over to the machine and sew that down. Okay, after we've sewed that down, we're going to come back over to the ironing board, open that up, Okay, so we folded the fabric and the seam allowance away from the tape, and we're going to press it like that, making sure that if you have any thick sections like I do here, that the seam allowance actually goes away from the tape. And you might have different things that you had to do to make your pieces full-size flat pieces. Like I had to put these extensions on and I had to sew down these little creases. You might have to do different things to make your pieces ready. And we're back over at the machine and we're going to edge stitch this side just like before. I could probably benefit from changing my needle. Okay, so we have installed a beautiful looking zipper. So now all that's left is to put this together. So I'm going to unzip the zipper about halfway so that it's easier to get into this. And we're going to put the pieces right sides together. And we're going to start over here with the corners. And then you can pin or clip. And it should look like it's folded right along the zipper like that if everything lined up well, and that's how you want it. And since I do have these little things here, I'm going to at least try to line up those seams there. I'm going to have to be careful with this button when I do sew this. Make sure that I'm not going to hit it. I'm going to check the seam up here too. Okay, so how this is going to work with this zipper in the final product is the zipper is just going to cover the entire length of that side of the pillow. There's other ways you could have done this, but this was the simplest way. If you wanted there to be a little bit of fabric on either side of the zipper, you could have done that. You could have taken this and kind of made the zipper, instead of going straight all the way, you could have kind of had it come off, like go off the edge, if that makes sense. Like take the zipper and make it go off the edge, and then you would sew through the zipper, and then you would just have your two purple pieces of fabric lining up when you got to the corner. That would have been an option. I just went with this option. There's other things you could do too. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and sew this all the way around. So I'm going to start with a back stitch. And since this is a nylon all-purpose zipper, we could sew right through it. The only thing you can't sew through is the metal pieces. Holding down my little seam that I want to be lined up. Stopping in the corner, however you think is about the same seam allowances from the side there. Pivot on the needle with the needle down. Okay, I'm approaching that button. I can feel it right here. So it's okay if my presser foot goes over the button as long as my needle doesn't hit the button. So it might be a little challenging to keep a stitch that's going straight, but I'm just gonna take it slow. Okay, so I've got my finger on the button. I can see the outline of the button. Okay, and we can peek back here. It looks like it turned out just fine. Continuing on. And going all the way to the end and ending with a back stitch. Okay, now we get to flip it right side out and see how it looks. Okay, I'm gonna clip off my little zipper extras to be even with the edge of the piece. And I'm going to finish it on the serger first too, because this is a pillowcase which will be taken on and off of the pillow, probably washed. The customer will see the inside, so I think this is something that should be finished on the serger. the corner, there is a way to make these look nice. I always end up getting a little loop of thread, so what I tend to do is just go off the edge, chain it out, cut it, and then just start new on the next edge. Sometimes you gotta kind of help it get through there. And again, I'm being mindful of that button. It's going to go under the presser foot, so it's just going to have a hard time staying straight, so I'm just going to try to help it. Okay, wasn't too much of a problem. Come to the zipper here, I'm being mindful of my blade. I don't want to dull it, although I'm sure it could chop right through that. I'm just going to let it kind of go next to the blade. Like that. Okay, so now all that's left to do is to deal with these ends. If you leave them like this, they get in the way and they also will come unraveled. So you can do a few things. You can take it into a large eye tapestry needle and slide it up into the stitch. You can tie it in a knot and just leave it, or you can do what I found that I like to do. Just hop over to the regular machine, lay the tail down onto the overlock stitch, and then with either a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch, just kind of go over it a few times, back and forth. I really need to change my needle. I think I changed it yesterday, but I put in a ballpoint needle and didn't remember that till just now. That's okay, we made it. Okay, so now I'm gonna do this one. After you've stitched these tails down so they can't unravel, then you can cut off the extra. And then we will flip it right side out. So we left the zipper partially open so that we could reach inside and flip it right side out. And then you'll just push into the corner so you have a nice rectangular shape. And there we have it. Zippered pillowcase made from a shirt. And there you have it, your zippered pillowcase using an old shirt. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more.